And Mayor O'Connell.
Present.
Thank you. I'd like to amend the agenda and adjourn in memory of Debbie Canfield. Can I get a first and second to adopt the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Cunningham.
Here.
Councilmember Davis.
Aye.
Councilmember Lentz.
Aye.
Councilmember Mackin.
Aye.
And Mayor O'Connell.
Aye.
We get a report out from closed session, please.
Yes, Madam Mayor. Thank you. The council met in closed session as disclosed on the agenda. The single item was a single property negotiation. Staff was seeking direction and was given direction by the council. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Now we move on to oral communications number 1. I have 3 slips. Nancy Laxamano, do you want to start?
Thank you very much. And I appreciate Ingrid putting out copies of this letter that you have all received today. I'm representing, along with Paul, 41 individuals who have sent in a letter that I would like to read for my 2 minutes. During a recent Brisbane City Council workshop, you invited, that being the council, our community to share what is important in meetings during public discussion. We are requesting that the following election topics be agendized so they can be researched by city staff, discussed by the city council, and have public input and discussion. Number 1, term limits for elected officials. Number 2, district elections so that selection of council members will represent all areas. Number 3, election citywide of mayor. Many California cities have moved to one or a combination of all 3 of the election processes, as their communities have determined enough value to move forward with the transition. Our ask, or this ask, is simply to put it on the city council agenda to provide our community with a platform so we as a community can work together to determine what is best for us. We look forward to having this on the agenda so Brisbane can continue to move forward with new ideas, increased representation, and accountability for the benefit for all in the community. And it's signed by 41 citizens. And my own personal opinion, I think this would be an extremely popular and team-building effort, having the community come together and talk through these issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sorry. Next on the list is Paul Biscoe.
Don't start the time yet. Paul Biscoe, Brisbane resident. Thank you, council. I concur, of course, with Nancy. And, you know, it's been said that there's been whining regarding this issue in a small minority of the community. And those names are just a small list of names of people that have concerns. And back when the members of the council wanted to extend their terms, that wasn't up to the council to decide on doing something like that. That was up to the community. And so they heard from people, but decided to pursue the extension of their terms. So I went out with other members of the community, and we got 10% of the population, which is required for petition, and had almost 400 people sign on to the letter. And so when we went out and did that, there was no mention of any of the council members. It was just the fact that that's what they wanted to do, and what's your feeling on that? So it was a real impartial question that we asked. Just like when I was supporting Anthony Walker for city council, and there were questions about why would you support somebody that you're not really familiar with and somebody that hasn't sat on any boards or commissions or anything else in the community, when the only requirement to run for council is to want to serve this community. And to be honest with you, he was the only council member that actually campaigned. And I was very proud of him for doing that, and actually got 1/3 of the vote practically in town, which is also telling. And it's not about him or the extension of the terms that the council wanted to do. It's about this community making decisions for this community when it comes to their interest and what they'd like to see. So this latest proposal that we have is not a personal thing against the council. It's just the way it should be in this community. Let's find out from the community what they'd like to see. So I hope you take that in consideration. I would also hope you could vote on it amongst yourself tonight to put it on the agenda. Thank you.
Michael?
Good evening. My name is Michael Barnes. I'm a Brisbane resident. I am here to tell the public how the City Council told a lie during your June 29th, 2023 meeting. The agenda item was a fee schedule. Colleen spoke about how fees should pay for facility improvements, and I used the swimming pool as an example of how that could not work. Just a month earlier, on May 18th, the City Council had allocated $200,000 from David Canepa towards a $1.7 million swimming pool heating system. I used these facts to illustrate how expensive it is to run and maintain the pool, and that user fees could never cover such high costs. Terry O'Connell's response was to ask the city engineer, "We don't have a $1.7 million pool heating project, do we?" To which the city engineer replied, "No, ma'am." Knowing that the council and the city engineer were wrong, I pressed politely to give you a chance to correct yourselves and asked if I was mistaken, to which Cunningham snapped yes. The rest of you sat silent, complicit. Here is the staff report from the May 18th, 2023 City Council meeting that describes replacing the swimming pool boiler with electrical heat pumps. It says, the estimated cost of the project plus 10% contingency is now $1.76 million. As you are hearing tonight, the public recognizes the unethical City Hall culture you've created. And in response, they are motivated to use the tools at their disposal to change the election process in Brisbane. The last City Council meeting showed us that even you, the City Council, recognize the unethical culture you've created. Your response was to commit to creating a code of conduct that would rein in unethical behavior. Personally, I think it's too late for the City Council. Your easy lies, unethical behavior, and belittling of the public, and what the public says on Facebook are too deeply part of your makeup to ever change. For instance, it's been 6 months since your June 29th lie, and not a single one of you have apologized. I can say with authority that the city councils that I was part of were not ethically challenged as you are. It's you, not me.
Clay, I have a question. Oh, excuse me, before I go on. Is there anybody else who would like to speak in oral communications?
We have a hand raised from Aaron B.
Go ahead, Aaron.
Hello, slight change of subject. I am Erin Becker. I'm the chair of OSEC and also a member of the Dark Skies Committee, subcommittee. I wish I could be there in person tonight, but I can't because I have an important work meeting tomorrow and I'm actually protecting my sleep and my needing to go to bed at a time to participate in East Coast meetings by staying home because the color temperature is better here and the lighting is dimmer. And I think this is actually exemplary of why dark skies ordinances are important. And so I want to let you guys know that even though I'm not there in person right now, I am completely engaged and anticipating passing of the ordinance because of the benefit it's going to bring to our citizens and to the natural environment around us. And I would like to say thank you.
Thank you, Erin. Is there anybody else who wants to speak in oral communications, Ingrid?
There are none, Madam Mayor. Mayor Pro Tem.
Clay, question for you. Relative to the district election conversation, haven't we done this before?
There was a council subcommittee and Councilwoman O'Connell was a part of that. And I believe Councilman Conway was a part of it a few years ago. And they looked at the issue and specifically the issue of housing relative to the Baylands. And I think they at that time, I don't necessarily want to speak for Terry, but I think they were supportive of the idea of district elections, but the timing of it would be when the Baylands developed. I'll let Terry speak for herself.
Okay, thank you.
I'll reiterate that we did look into it. There is quite a bit of legal changes that would need to take place within our city charter to go to district elections, and it would take quite a while to implement and get approval from the state to do that. We did think that it would be something that would be necessary once the Baylands started progressing a little further, and we understood what kind of population would be out in that area, so that we did get representation throughout the city and the city as it progresses forward. Again, I think that that's something that we can agendize and look at again in a subcommittee and get staff input and what kind of things would need to happen from there. But since that's not on the agenda tonight, I don't think we can really discuss it.
Thanks, Terry. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak in oral communications? Okay.
And I have a question, Karen. So, so Clay, I know that, we can't talk about the items that have been raised by the public. But I just wanted to understand, like, the process of getting something on a council agenda. I know that Terry had mentioned, a subcommittee agenda, though that isn't really what the public is asking for. They're asking to have something on a council agenda. Could the council give direction to staff and put it on a future agenda if it so wanted to do so?
I'm going to punt to the city attorney in terms of just what you can or cannot do this evening.
Okay.
It's not agendized. I was letting it go because I thought it was a factual statement by Clay and Terry, but Council Mayor, the council shouldn't go further tonight. If you want to ask about an agenda question in Councilmember Lentz later in the meeting, that would be appropriate, but I wouldn't tie it to this particular topic because it's not agendized.
Okay, no, that makes sense. So then, like, under mayor and council matters, that's probably a better place for it?
Yeah, because it's not agendized tonight otherwise, but that's a general question.
All right, no, that makes sense. All right, thanks.
Okay. Excuse me.
And thank you for those who spoke tonight. I appreciate you coming to the meeting.
So moving on to the consent calendar. Anybody like to approve consent calendar?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Wait, I think we need to clarify. Items what through what?
Items B, C, D, E, F.
Yeah.
Make the motion we approve consent calendar items B through F.
I seconded.
Roll call vote. Councilmember Cunningham.
Aye.
Councilmember Davis.
Aye.
Councilmember Lentz.
Aye.
Councilmember Mackin.
Aye.
And Mayor O'Connell.
Aye.
Thank you. Moving on to new business, item G, Capital Improvement Plan Update for fiscal year 2023 and 2024. We have a staff report, please.
I'm going to kick this off and then turn it over to our finance director, Carolina Yoon. So as you recall, our capital improvement program is something that we review every 2 years. And the purpose of tonight is to go through the program for the council to ask any questions with regards to the items that are on there. I think we've given you some project descriptions for the new projects. We've also had the departments identify priorities, and so that you can kind of weigh in on that. Tonight, we're not asking you to make any decisions on authorizing funding other than 2 projects that are in the utility funding because that funding is available. The items that are tied to the general fund, and the finance director will go through that with you. We're recommending that you hold off on moving forward until we have our mid-year review, which will probably be in April. And I know sometimes that feels like it's late in the year, but the reality is that it takes us that long to really capture the middle of the year, which is basically December, January. So we'll be coming back to you in that time frame and identifying if there's any of these projects you want to move forward with. With that said, I think I'll turn it over to Finance Director.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Sorry, this is, you've been given, as part of the package, the CIP list, the capital improvement plan guidelines, and then the requests. And as interim city manager Holstein indicated, we're looking for only certain approvals, and we definitely wanted to provide opportunity for discussion tonight. But let me just go back and just remind and refresh our memories. The last time we visited the capital improvement plan was in January 2022. And it's usually looked at every other year on the off years of a 2-year budget cycle. For the last several years, we've been having an annual budget. Since COVID, we determined that it was better to have a single year, and then also with plans of change in management, that this would be most appropriate. And so with that, the 2024 budget was presented last June, and there was a recommendation at that time in order to approve that budget to go through, to put several projects of the actual budget on hold until economic times and the results of the year could be reviewed further. And so with that recommendation are the reasons why we are not actually looking for additional general fund approval tonight, but we do want to give you the opportunity to look at the items and request. So going to the next page of the PowerPoint, we have several sources to fund the projects that we present. Of course, the general fund and general operations. Enterprise funds will usually take care of their own projects, and we have the utilities funds and the marina fund. Grants are also requested and sought out where possible. That is a variety of sources, whether it's federal, state, or even local grants, or even special agency grants. We also have financing through bonds or loans, if that's possible. Some of the projects we seek out are partners, such as the school district, for some of the shared properties. We also have a few projects that we will seek out with developers that they are called upon as part of their planning agreements. And then another source we have are special revenue funds. And this could include gas tax, which is whether it's from the state or local gas taxes, several county measures. So those are just examples of special revenue funds that can be tapped. Specifically, special revenue funds are usually for very specific purposes, and they're very restrictive. So that's just a variety of the funding sources that are available. And when we reviewed our own general fund, we look at our reserve, and for a preliminary number for June 23, we have about 11 million of reserves. However, those reserves are restricted by our own fund policy. In the next slide, if you'll recall, when we presented the budget for approval, that we have three portions of the fund balance policy. We have 2.5 million, that is a recession reserve. 3.5 million that is set aside for unanticipated events, which could be like natural disasters or any other types that are unanticipated. And then the third arm of the policy is a flexible fluctuation, it's an annual fluctuation, a reserve, but it's variable based off of the amount of revenue and expenses that are budgeted for the year. So it's 5% of the expenses and 5% of the revenue. And so for fiscal year 24, the amount for the annual fluctuation reserve was $2,765,000. So we're looking at almost $9 million of that 11 is just by policy alone is restricted. Then you also have restrictions based off of commitments, agreements for multi-year contracts, things of that nature. So that is another reason why we are putting on hold as far as making any recommendation for the release of any of the reserves at this time. Okay. You can turn. So we do have the list of the capital projects, but we wanted to present to you the various that were requested. And before we do that, we also wanted to highlight some of the items that were completed since January 2022. The first one being the Crocker Trail commuter connectivity upgrade project, which was a council-driven project. Department of Public Works were able to complete Sierra Point lift station improvements as part of the utilities area. And then the fire were able to complete a light upgrade, LED light upgrade for Station 81. And if you'd like to go through the order of the requested items or the items that were changed, we can go in that route. And then I'll also put onto the screen to share the actual list. So I'm going to do that now. Bear with me here. You seen it? Okay, so it'll take some time to get on there.
Blank.
Yeah, that's,
Don't share it. I think it's going.
oh, okay.
I think it's going through this.
Pardon the technical adjustments here.
Can the audience see this okay?
It's good.
Can you see it? Yep.
It's on, but it's not on our screen. We apologize. Okay, so unfortunately, the second screen isn't going to allow us to navigate through the spreadsheet, but you do have the lists. And what we can do is go through the order of the second attachment, which are the new items that are being discussed or presented. So on page 88 of your packets is the Brisbane Village electric vehicle fast charger replacement. So currently at the Brisbane Village Shopping Center, the fast charger is not operable. And so the projected cost in order to replace would be 4 stations in the same location would be $40,500. This is not considered a high priority item at this time, but it is a request that was made through the Open Space Committee, and so we wanted to raise it forward. On page
So
89.
would
Okay.
this be the time for the subcommittee to make comments about how we discussed this? Or would you rather we waited until you've gone through the entire list?
I think it's fine, yeah. If you'd like to comment, that would be great.
Okay. Councilmember Cunningham and I were on the subcommittee that reviewed this list, and while we're under the understanding that there's no requests for funding at this time that we're going to be making a decision on, that was a request that we discussed and with staff and came to the understanding that that was not an immediate need and should be taken off the list. Correct me if I'm wrong, Councilmember Cunningham.
No, that is correct. And we also understand that that is outdated technology. We were told how we got that money in the beginning. I have forgotten that. But with all the news charging stations here at City Hall and in other places around Brisbane, we felt that this was an unnecessary use of our money. And it's not really benefiting us at all. So was that about right, Terry?
That's how I recalled it. Yes, thank you.
May I make a comment at this time on that item?
Sure.
As far as vehicle chargers, there's some new programs with Peninsula Clean Energy that I mentioned to Clay, and I think it would be worth our while to investigate. There's going to be some, I'll talk about later, some surplus funds available that, since this dollar amount is so low, I think we could possibly apply and get the funding for this from Peninsula Clean Energy.
I think anything we can get from Peninsula Clean Energy.
It's worth a try.
For sure.
Yeah.
But does it say here that, like, it hasn't, the sources that might otherwise fund replacements rely on newer federal standards which require 4+ stations in the same location and or higher charging capacities, neither of which is feasible at this location. So are you saying that's outside of,
Well,
there might be opportunities outside of those confines?
Instead of necessarily just replacing at Brisbane Village, it might entail something else, but I think it's worthwhile to look into the funding first and see if we can get more chargers in general, which I think we probably have a good chance.
We also have expanded like a lot of the charging opportunities in the city of Brisbane since we had, this was like our first
Yes.
station, so.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's Bank of America property too, not that we want to get into putting any permanent infrastructure in, but obviously the advantage to Brisbane Village is people who are there in a lunch hour or shopping or who work there probably would utilize the charger a lot.
It also says that at the Park and Ride too, there's gonna be the level 2, which would pull some of that traffic from Bayshore also.
Cliff, did you have any comments since we're talking about this?
You know, I do have a question. In regards to the network and maintenance fees, so they're $250 a month. Since the stations are not active right now, we're not paying that amount, correct? It's only when it's in service. Okay, and then the revenues that are generated from people using it, does it basically offset the fees that we pay?
Not 100%, but it does offset some.
Fairly close? No? Okay. Maybe the technology, if it was better, would get us there. Okay.
Terry, did you have any more comments?
Not on this item, no.
Thank you. Thanks, Caroline.
Okay. Moving on to page 89, DPW 94. This is a wastewater infiltration inflow study. This is considered high priority, but it's coming from the enterprise, which is one of the items that we were hoping would be approved tonight.
again, on this item, when we discussed it in the infrastructure subcommittee, this is something that, while it would require to spend some funds, we would more than make up for it with the loss of waste. So it was recommended by the subcommittee to approve this project.
What I remember was currently costing us more money. And if we go ahead with this infrastructure change, all those extra costs that it's costing us now relative to the water will go away, which is again saving our cash.
Correct. And we could discuss approval at the end? Is that how you want to do it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Next page, 90. DPW 95 is the Guadalupe Canyon Parkway flushing unit. This is also coming out of the enterprise fund for the amount of $50,000, but it's considered high priority, and we are requesting this be approved tonight.
Any comments on that?
No.
No? Okay. Let's keep going, Carolina.
Well, it would be great to, like, if you guys have discussed this at the subcommittee, because clearly there are some projects that the subcommittee is recommending to move forward with and others that you aren't, is my guess. So if there is a project that you guys have already studied and you want, you're suggesting, let us know.
I guess the biggest takeaway is that water is an enterprise fund, and they do have some money to go ahead with some projects. The
Okay,
general fund projects have no money.
okay,
And
thank you.
so
Yes.
it really comes down to, in the enterprise funds, what the fund itself can afford and what the administrator of that fund in Public Works feels is going to be cost effective and what we can afford to do at this time without having to find additional funding sources. So there are a few projects in the water and the enterprise funds that have funding, and there's a couple projects that we're going to talk about later that are matching funds that if we don't use the matching funds or allow the matching funds, then we would lose the initial grant. So there's a couple projects that we did want to make recommendations to approve, but almost all of the other projects would be discretionary funds that we just don't have. So yes, the ones that are in the Public Works water that are high priority and they've got the funding for them, we were recommending for those.
Okay, thanks.
I don't have the list in front of me, so it's harder because I can't really go down the list. But that's my impression.
Okay.
We'll describe as such as applicable. Okay, so page 91 are the Crocker Shuttle Stop Improvements, DPW 96. This is actually one of those projects that part of it is, or the majority of it is actually through a grant, but the city is called upon to do a local match. And this was presented already to the council earlier in the year, fiscal year, but it was not, this is a formality to add it to the CIP list. And so it is considered high priority in order to complete it and not lose the 100% of the grant. Okay.
When would you need the council to give you guidance?
You already have.
We already have?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There are some projects, and this is one example of one, where you've already actually approved it during a regular council session, and we're just now adding it to the CIP program because it qualifies for that
Okay.
listing. So I know that gets a little confusing, but in this case, you've already funded it.
Got it. All right, thanks.
For example, Cliff, if you go to page 2 of 4 here, and the only red lined item there is DPW 43 streets, that's that alley improvement that we actually got approved for funding, I think, 3-4 years ago now, right? For that alleyway from Alvarado to San Benito, which is a very high priority. I do believe it is finally coming up for development in the summer.
Yeah, that's one of my questions for later on.
Yeah, so it's finally coming up, and that we have to use that money or we lose it, so.
Yeah.
Okay. So moving on to page 92, we have a fire project, Fire 12, which is coming out of the general fund for $35,000 is the latest cost projection. Just want to alert that this was actually a combination with a prior listing item of Fire 13. Basically, it's to replace carpet in office and common area Station 81. And the update is to not only use carpet as an option, but to seek alternative materials. For this one and the next one, which are fire related, we do have a representative here. I apologize for your title, Joel, Deputy Chief. Joel Abramson is here. If we have additional questions. But so for 12 and page 93, Fire 14, these are basically replacing or adding alternative materials for flooring. So
If I recall correctly, one of the reasons we're going away from the idea of carpet is if the firefighters are out in the field and there's toxic substances on the ground from an event, then they're walking those toxic substances back into the carpets, et cetera. So is that correct?
Yes, you hit on right on. So there's a couple things that is the cancers awareness that's come around. Obviously the COVID. So the idea is that the alternative materials are easier to clean. So we can clean them regularly because we're gonna track those materials. We try to do things limited, but ultimately it's gonna be there. So especially where it's the only one issue where we may continue to use carpet we haven't decided yet is the bedrooms because of heating issues. But yeah, it's basically to avoid the cancerous materials that we know are out there, especially on the fires, but also the fluids and things that
Yep.
in the environments we're in. So yeah, you're correct.
Thank you.
any other questions?
Any other questions on that? No? Okay, thank you, Carolina.
And so again, Fire 14 is the alternative material or new carpet in the dorm site area. Also general fund for an amount of $16,000. And then the next few items that we have our Parks and Recreation Director, Noreen Leek, who is here, if we have additional questions. So I'll actually go ahead and have her start with PR 02.
Do you want me to just go through what the changes were?
Yeah, you have a better.
So item PR 02 and PR 28 were just merged together. We had previously, they were separated on the CIP list. Both pertain to improvements at the community park. So we just merged them into one item. And that's not being identified as a high priority at this time. The next item.
Wait, I have a question.
Yep.
Where is this projected to go?
Well, there's no formal proposal for it yet. It hasn't been pursued, but the thought was that there's some area either behind the restrooms in the community park or between the restrooms and Old County Road that could potentially be utilized for this purpose.
Okay.
And for the public, we're not describing what this is because they're not seeing anything on the screen. So is this the bocce ball courts?
Yes.
That's correct.
Sport
Okay,
courts.
thank you.
Sport courts installation at community park.
Thank you.
Okay.
The next item is PR-11, which is Lippman Field turf renovation. The only change here is that it was identified as a priority project for the Parks and Recreation Commission. There's an interest in studying the field and its maintenance needs, with the understanding that there's no funding being allocated for that project at this time. If the commission wishes to pursue that, they would bring a separate proposal before the city council with identified alternative funding sources for that project. PR-05 is full-size soccer field construction. That's being removed from the list. I think that was an old remnant of negotiations when the Ridge was being built out. So we're simply removing it from the list at this time. PR-26 is sunrise room window coverings. We previously had this on the CIP list. We made an ask to the city council as part of the budget process last fiscal year to have that item approved, since it's under the $10,000 threshold for CIP projects. So that was approved as part of the budget process last year. And that's all. The PR-28 was the merge with PR-02.
I have a question about PR-24, if you're amenable to me asking a question.
Of course.
So PR.
PR-24.
I will do my best to answer that, but
It might be a Carolina question.
okay.
Noreen's like, great. I think it's ultimately a Randy question, but
Yeah.
we're going to try our best.
Yeah.
But since a member of the public brought us this item today, I think it's important to provide maybe a little bit more clarity. So what is the amount that the city is actually putting towards this project in terms of general fund, not grant money that we're receiving to complete the project, but what are the actual costs that the city is paying for this? Is it 50,000, 180, 180?
Well, 180 was the latest cost estimate for the project.
Okay.
Yeah.
Again,
So-
what project are we talking about? We
We're
can't do
talking-
anything.
So we're talking about the heat pump water heating system for the community pool.
PR-24 on the page. It's a big spreadsheet. Sorry.
It's on page 4 of,
Page 4 of the grid
Yep.
of the list.
Does staff have an amount of what we're actually spending, the city itself is spending on this project?
Have to defer because there's
Well,
a,
we had, I'm sorry there was confusion over this, so we'll make that apology. What we brought forward to you a staff report that identified a number, and I think it was around 173,000, something in that neighborhood, that would actually be city money. And the whole project cost was about 1.7 million, of which the 200,000 was from the Measure K funds. So the project to move forward is going to need all those other funding sources to come together. So we're anticipating that it's going to take every bit of the next couple of years to actually bring all that together. And I think the Public Works Director, when he responded to that question last year, was thinking of it in terms of the city's costs. So again, apologize for that confusion. The total project cost is about 1.7 million, but the city's contribution to that is about 10%.
Right. And the rest of the money is coming from multiple different grant sources.
Yes.
And if you don't use it, you lose it. Same with the Alvarado, stairway, same with the commute.org, shuttle improvements, right? So the out-of-pocket cost to the city is rather minor considering the overall, what the overall amount is. What we're actually spending out of the general fund and city money is just a
Correct.
small fraction.
We find these in a lot of projects that where different agencies like to leverage their funds. For example, Measure K funds, the
Right.
supervisor, that was about the amount of money he could spend, but he was very interested in doing a project, but to be able to do something that was really going to have some value to us, we needed to cobble it together with some other funding. So that is not easy to do and it takes some time, but that's basically the way you kind of leverage these dollars to do bigger projects.
Thank you for the clarification.
and we'll add special Measure K to the listing as a funding source. That concludes the list of items that we had, that we were presenting for your review and possible approval. Do you have any other questions?
Any questions for Carolina?
Yeah, I have a couple.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Carolina, for identifying the different funds. So, one of the asks tonight is to take some funds out of the enterprise fund to fund a couple of items. So, can you just kind of give us maybe a ballpark of how much money is in the enterprise fund and how money gets into the enterprise fund? And
The enterprise funds money, the difference between an enterprise and a general fund is how taxes come in for your general governmental funds, but then the enterprise funds are self-sustaining by fees or of service, such as the utilities are the rates that are charged for water usage, sewer usage, the various fees, capital charge, drought fees. And then there are a variety of other fees that go into just having access to the system, like connection fees, things of that nature. So if any funds that are going to be used from the enterprise funds have to be used for purposes that are going to be part of the sewer system or the water system. So we cannot use those funds to pay for any projects that are like for the governmental side. So it's very important to make that distinction. General fund money can go to the enterprise fund, but enterprise funds cannot go the other direction.
Okay, no, thank you for that. That makes it easier to understand. And then, so, you're taking in this revenue, and then there comes a point when, hey, we have some funds that aren't being spent on other items.
Maintenance and
right,
operations.
Maintenance, right.
Operations, right.
So then you could apply it to these particular items.
And just to refresh everyone's memory, we had been on a plan to do every 5 years to seek out bonds to cover a lot of the improvements for the utility fund. Unfortunately, because the rates were upside down in the last few years, that we were unable to get additional bonds to cover some of the projects. So now, until the rates catch up with the expenses of the system, we're going to have to be using funds coming in from the reserve or annual funds that are coming in order to pay for these types of projects.
Okay, all right. And then just last question, in regards to the reserves. So you showed that one slide that had, the various buckets that we have instilled ourselves, right, to make sure that we're fiscally prudent. That's about $9 million. We have about $11 million in the reserves, but there's other things that we need to see, what we might need to pay. But we won't know until we have that mid-year evaluation. So when will that occur?
Yeah, we're looking in about a month or so. There's some progression that we have to do in order to get that information to you.
Okay, and then when you do that, you'll actually be bringing both back to us then?
Enterprise as well?
Yeah, well, what I'm saying is that, so some of these capital improvement things, right, they're going to come back. We have an opportunity to get a better understanding from you what our financial picture looks like, and thus then we can make those decisions that we feel, okay, maybe we have a little bit more room than what we thought, and maybe applying funds to certain priorities that we've already identified.
If the council wishes for us to bring it back at that time, we can, or if they want a separate time, whatever you wish.
Okay, yeah, no, I think it would be helpful to, really get a solid picture of what our finances are. recently we've been kind of tight with spending, for due cause. But it doesn't always have to be like that, if we do have the money. And so it's just really good to feel confident in your numbers and then what we might prioritize for spending that makes the community a better place.
Correct.
All right.
But
thank
staff
you.
feels, and the subcommittee feels that we can authorize some of the enterprise projects now, right?
Right.
Definitely for the enterprise. I'm talking more general fund.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Just to clarify.
Yeah.
Okay.
So right at this point, Caroline, we are running and expected to run in a deficit mode. To make our budget for last year, we anticipated pulling out of reserves. Isn't that correct?
That was correct. I
And we
believe,
expect that trend to continue for another year or two, depending on how revenues and the economy goes. Is that correct?
that was correct. We had about, in our projection, at least a couple of years.
Okay, that's my only, I know that when those numbers come out and we know what our fiscal position is, those numbers will come back to the council. And at that point, we'll know more whether we can bring back additional capital projects or not.
Okay.
Any other comments, Terry?
No.
Pauline?
I would echo what Councilmember Lenz said. I think that the items that are coming from the general fund needs to be examined at a mid-year budget review, so we really know what we're dealing with. And looking at what's priority, obviously the things that require matches have to be priority over anything else. The enterprise funds, I assume those just go ahead because you're suggesting that it is a separate fund, and if there's funds available, why wouldn't we?
So to confirm, we are mid-year because we're on fiscal, like our fiscal year, right, is July through June, end of June. So we're in January, but it is a 2-year cycle. So you're suggesting at the midway point?
No.
You alluded to a mid-year budget review coming up soon. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
You said about the next month, right?
Right, might go 1 or 2 months. A lot of it depends on the calendaring of the council meetings, but just so that the audience understands, mid-year, of course, is December, but there are a lot of revenue items or expenses that are actually like a 1-month lag. So we have to make sure all of those items are processed. And in order to provide, quality of information, we want to make sure that we vet the information and do analysis before we present to you properly.
Okay.
I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay, we have public comment?
Michael, you wanted to speak on this item?
Comment.
Michael Barnes, Brisbane resident. I understood from staff early last year that the EIR for the Crocker Trail Master Plan was going to be funded out of the capital improvement plan. If that is still true, it would be nice to see that included in the plan, even if you cannot fund it. I did not see it in the plan. If it's being funded another way, my mistake, but that's just what I was told by staff a year ago. And I'd like to see the city complete the Crocker Trail Master Plan's EIR so that the city can actually accept donations of features for the Crocker Trail and actually build out the Crocker Trail after you ask the citizens for their input. You approved that plan 2 years ago. So it'd be nice to see that followed up and completed at some point. And to the issue raised about the $1.7 million pool heating system, I used that as an example on June 29th as to how user fees cannot cover facility improvements, which was a discussion point from City Councilmember Mackin. And so that's what I was saying. It wasn't where the money was coming from. But since you brought it up, I do have some figures here from your staff reports. So your staff report from May 23rd, 2003 lists the city using 118,000 from the general fund, but you actually, in July of 2022, approved an allocation of 183,000 for that same purpose, because that included a 10% contingency for going over budget. At that time, the pool heating system was forecast to cost $650,000. Because the California Public Utilities Commission said you cannot keep your gas boiler, then that exploded the cost of the project to 1.76 million. So you don't have a 10% contingency for that 1.76 million. So if it does go over 10%, there's going to have to be a supplemental appropriation at some point in the future. Also, the $375,000 from the California Energy Commission is actually a 1% 15-year loan. That loan is very likely to be paid out of the general fund. So that 375,000 plus the 118,000 comes to 493,000. So let's say 500,000. And if there are cost overruns, it could be as much as 670,000 that comes out of general fund in the future. Those are just the numbers. I'm not particularly concerned about it, but I'm trying to keep the record set straight. Thank you.
Hobble on over.
Paul Buscal, Brisbane resident, and I think this would be an appropriate meeting to bring this up, that I brought up for years. And last January, this came to light all over the place because of the severe storm we had, unprecedented. And it's about dangerous trees in Brisbane. And I let you all know, and the city know, that while you may be exempt from liability, the city wouldn't be exempt from liability, because there are 3 criteria that put liability on dangerous trees. And it's dead, diseased, or improperly maintained trees. So I think about down near Public Works, I think about the fire department, I think about the entrance to town, both streets, Old County and San Bruno Avenue. Anywhere there are dangerous eucalyptus trees. Think about what a lawsuit would cost the city if somebody got killed because a tree fell on them, like what happened on 19th Avenue or any other areas where you see big trees coming down and it kills people. We could go bankrupt from one lawsuit. And the city attorney's here today. He's never chimed in when I brought this up last January. And I will tell you that FEMA and the state of California and the county has hazard mitigation grants. And they even state that they'll remove hazardous trees. Okay, they don't have to fall down before they'll put money out. They'll even do it on private property if trees are deemed dangerous. So dangers to lives, property, infrastructure. They'll even take a tree down if it could fall on a road if it was deemed dangerous. Well, all these eucalyptus trees have been deemed dangerous because they're at their life expectancy. And that could be contested, but the fact that they were improperly maintained, those are 3 criteria. It's not an act of nature or act of God or whatever they call it. It's, you're liable. So inaction by the city puts this whole community at risk. And we're talking about capital improvements. In the criteria for capital improvements, it says community concerns. It doesn't have to be what Public Works says. It doesn't have to be what the fire department or police department or any other department says what their needs are. It's the needs of this community. So like we do our water and sewer, which are high priority for health and safety, these trees are right up there. So if there's one danger in this town, it's these big trees. So if you could please get one of your grant writers, if you have them, start applying for these grants. We don't have to wait for a catastrophic situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Can we look into some tree maintenance, Clay?
Turn on the mic.
I'm sorry, fire department has personnel that has, that looks into grant opportunities, and we do pursue those when opportunities do arise.
Thanks.
If I may,
Go ahead.
the fire department's primary concern is hazard mitigation for fire. That's why they do a lot of their work that they do, which they're very diligent. Clyde Preston, he's on top of what he does. Albeit maybe not right away because of money or other higher priority situations, but this isn't about the fire department. This is about the city of Brisbane and our city management, not the fire department, to apply for these grants and take care of these trees.
Thank you, Paul.
If I may,
Go ahead.
I would ask the city manager, maybe this is a topic for a future agenda to consider, but also to have Randy involved, because it begs the question, who's doing the assessment of the trees?
I'd be glad to put it on an agenda. I totally disagree with Paul's assessment. First of all, the fire department is the city of Brisbane. Public Works Department also does tree mitigation. They go out on complaints. They do look at existing trees. I think some of the comments here are irresponsible and suggest that we are not paying attention to potential mitigation issues with regards to hazardous situations. Paul, I'm not going to get into debate in a public meeting.
Paul,
So,
Paul, please. Paul, please.
Well, certainly there may be more that we want to find out about this, but we're not going to solve it tonight.
And we do have an active grant program in the Public Works Department also, and they look at a number of things. We send those reports out to you as well as the fire department, all part of the city of Brisbane.
and I don't think that tree maintenance is a capital improvement subject, so this is not an agendized topic.
Tom, you were going to say something?
I was just going to say that we really don't want a back and forth between staff and a citizen making a comment, whether it's a capital improvement or not.
Right.
That's a decision for the council and staff. On liability, I will just say for the record, I'm not aware of any city attorney, and maybe they do, but I'm certainly not going to do it. I'm not going to respond to a series of presumed facts and say, and therefore the city could be liable and it could be bankrupt. That's just not something I will ever do for any client. So that's why I have not commented in the past. The city has my advice, and we can proceed on that basis.
Thank you, Tom. Any more questions for Carolina
There's a
about?
hand raised. We have a hand raised from Diana S.
Oh, thank you. Go ahead, Diana.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify, there was some comment about the heat pump system for the community pool. And there was kind of back and forth with citizens. And then Clay had mentioned that maybe he had misspoke. So it seems to me like the total cost was 1.7, but the city's cost was, I'm looking at the grid, I'm like 180. I don't know if it's 230. So it just seems like there wasn't really miscommunication about that, maybe just some misunderstanding. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any other comments from City Council? No. Carolina, do you have anything else to add here?
No, thank you for your time. Thank you for looking over the list, and we appreciate the time of the subcommittee as well that reviewed the items with us. And Randy was at that meeting and was able to provide more information for the Public Works list, and apologizes that he had a conflict tonight and couldn't attend. But we appreciate your consideration tonight.
Thanks, Carolina. Okay, council discussion and recommendation to staff.
I mean, I would make a motion to fund projects DPW 94, DPW 95, funded from enterprise funds.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Councilmember Cunningham,
Aye.
Councilmember Davis,
Aye.
Councilmember Lentz,
Aye.
Councilmember Mackin,
Aye.
and Mayor O'Connell.
Aye. Were there any other projects that were on staff's immediate list that needed approval?
Not at this time.
If I may make a comment, I would personally like council to go back over this. So so we're more familiar with this when Carolina brings it back in about a month. I mean, there's a lot there. Some things might go up in priority, down in priority. We've got another couple of big storms coming through. Don't really know what that's going to do to our infrastructure again. So if we could keep this for bedtime reading and bring it back for the next meeting. Okay, moving on. Staff reports. Item H, City Manager's report on upcoming activities.
Just heads up that the long-awaited project at the community park for playground resurfacing is going to be taking place here in the next few weeks, weather dependent. And so that will be, the facility will be not available to the public for a few weeks while we're going through that construction. I believe that's it for tonight.
Sorry, that was it, Clay?
Yes.
Oh, thanks. And then going on to item I, Development Project Status Report Q1 of 2024.
Yeah, so when we met last, we talked about bringing a quarterly update on major development projects as they're working their way through the planning process. We have a number of them that are fairly significant. The first one was the Sierra Point Hotel and Biotech project. We anticipate the EIR for that to be published in 2025. That's an 11-story hotel with 600 rooms, about 20,000 square feet of vacant space, 11,600 square feet of meeting rooms, and 11-story, approximately 657,000 square foot office tower, and about 3,700 feet of retail, and a park and podium for 1,200 spaces. That's on the site that's been planned for a hotel out there for, I think, going back into the 1980s. The second project that is going to be the first one coming through the planning process is the Guadalupe Quarry redevelopment. This is a proposed closure and annexation into the city of Brisbane. Reclamation of the Guadalupe Quarry, annexation of 59 acres and 146 acre site into the city limits to accommodate a proposed 1.3 million square foot warehouse. And again, the EIR is expected to be out shortly on that. The next one is the Bayland specific plan. This was the Measure JJ from 2018. 680 acre Bayland site, about 2,200 residential units, or up to 2,200 residential units, 6.5 million square feet of commercial development, 500,000 feet of hotel, and the EIR is under preparation. We expect it to be out in spring of this year. And then the Sierra Point Towers project, which is a proposed redevelopment of the 2000 Sierra Point Parkway and 800 Marina Boulevard that would demolish the existing parking garage and surface parking lots on a project site and construct 3 new buildings and a new parking garage. One of the buildings would be 14 stories and about 500,000 square feet of office life science. The second building would be a 9-story, 317,000 square foot office life science. And then it would be a 2-story, 40,000 square foot amenity building and a 12-story parking structure with approximately 3,700 parking spots. EIR preparation is underway, and that is expected to be published in late of 2024.
Thank you. Anything else for the city manager's report?
That's all for tonight.
Okay, thanks. So we're going to move on to the mayor and council matters, countywide assignments and subcommittee reports. Who would like to start? Madison, I nominate you.
Councilmember Cunningham and I had a public art committee meeting. We had a presentation from Caroline Chung about the community park donor wall and how the stars are falling off. And the city was asking the committee whether the committee thought that that donor wall could be a potential collaboration with the public art committee. The committee considered some options, and the committee felt at this time that using public art funds for the donor wall was not necessarily in alignment with what the uses of that fund.
It's more of a maintenance
Yeah.
rather than creating art.
There was a little discussion about how the council expressed an interest in trying to preserve sand somewhere at the community park. And we couldn't work the nuts and bolts out on that when we discussed the resurfacing because we were just approving, we were just having a conversation around the grant funding and the problems with the resurfacing at the park and how sand just really couldn't be a part of the playground in its current location because it wears down the port in place. But it seemed like the council was interested in maybe finding another area within the park that sand could be incorporated to, maintain that sensory play that's really important to parents. And so perhaps if the city moves ahead with another location a little bit of a distance away from the port in place and wanted to install a sand pit, for example, maybe there would be collaboration with the public art committee to do like an enclosure that we could hire like a metal artist or something of that nature, or a muralist that could paint something around a type of enclosure, and then have an element of that art piece recognize people who donated to the park at that time, but really have the design be around art with the donor, recognizing donors as an element, but not the driving force of the art, if that makes sense. So we respectfully declined the opportunity to collaborate on just a donor wall, but entertain the idea of perhaps a larger project where art is the focus and recognizing donors is a little bit secondary. So if the city chooses to move forward with incorporating sand at some point, sounds like the Public Art Committee is ready and willing to come to the table to talk about how art could be a part of that addition. We also reviewed our 2024 projects, small art projects that we could do. We talked about benches throughout town. We also talked about, in the past, we had wanted to work on stairways in town as a location for art. And we thought it would be best if the city received funding for a stairway project, that maybe we could come in the early stages and partner with Public Works to, for example, install some lighting that was art focused, or a railing, for example, and have art, or mosaic stairs and have art be an integral part of that stairway from its initial development. And because maybe this project is finally coming to fruition with Alvarado, that may be something in the summer where Public Art can partner with Public Works to finance part of the budget for lighting or for railings and that sort of thing.
I'm just kind of curious. So, I'm sure this is a question you probably asked. Like that project, we need to provide matching funds. So does it matter where the matching funds are coming from as long as they're coming from the city of Brisbane?
I don't
And not to
think so.
to
Good question,
deviate
but I
from
don't think,
that, but
I don't think it matters.
I don't think it matters. I think it's something that, we're planning to start meeting with Public Works to figure out like what a partnership might look like. And I don't know if that's even possible, if that's something that Public Works would entertain, having something that's deviating from like the standard lighting or the standard railing. We don't know yet, just tossing that idea out. But I would think it would be maybe like a shared cost because the city would have to put a railing in, the city would have to put lighting in anyway. But if we wanted it to be artful, then maybe any excess money that would be beyond what the city would normally spend on that kind of thing can be supplemented by the Public Art Fund, for example. So, but I think it's important to get in on the installation instead of, it's easier to
like an
work on a project
afterthought,
from the very
right?
beginning.
No, I think that's great. Just kind of thinking of there's some of those stairways in San Francisco that have the mosaics embedded into the stairs, and they're just incredible works of art.
Well,
I'm just
if
thinking
you-
like that one that's by Legion of Honor at the bottom of the the golf
There's also
course.
quite a few in the Sunset.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And
as
if you look at Alvarado to San Benito and use your imagination, that could be fantastic. And it's a very interesting space. So yeah, it was a robust conversation.
Yeah. We also talked about the fact that phase 3 actually installed their pieces, their CO2 molecule, and then their 3 sculptures. So they're there. I guess they even spent a lot more than they had originally anticipated because the CO2 molecule was so heavy that the amount of additional infrastructure that was needed, I guess, was a lot. And there's pictures of it being installed with a crane, which was interesting to see. So if you're in that area, the art is there. Phase 3 is interested in doing a ribbon cutting ceremony, which would be really exciting and not just one that's focused on their campus, but one that's particularly focused on the art. Because this is our first project with a developer that's come to fruition, which is really exciting. So we can be on the lookout for, scheduling an event of that nature.
All right, cool. Oh, just one question for you guys. The projects that you're talking about, I think are pretty awesome. I think there's some really good potential, but they all seem to be in central Brisbane. So what are some of the things that you possibly could do on the ridge?
We have identified.
Or the trailer park,
Well,
the mobile home, the mobile home park.
We've identified the 4 priorities areas, and that is through public art. And we haven't really gone any further with any other projects yet because this is where we're at. This has been a long process. It took South San Francisco 10 years to get their public art ordinance together. So I think we're moving along pretty quickly considering, but it is another long process, and that's just the way it is.
Karen has like this idea for benches throughout town that, are all, they could have different themes. They could be made by different artists. They could also be sponsored. And those could be placed anywhere.
Can I speak a bit more to that? Okay, so relative to that, there's 2 things going on. So we've got the creation of art benches potentially. Could be a competition, it could be an adopt a bench, it could be public art funds that we choose different artists to do different things throughout town, which brings up what you were just saying. Could be out at the marina, it could be any way you want them to be. But I have a secondary bench project that I have a deadline to get through cafe. That is, we are now an age-friendly, excellent city. We are a cafe city. And I have a 1-year deadline, and I don't know when that deadline ends, whether it's the presentation of what we're going to do or the finalization of what we're going to do. But my idea as the lead on this project is that we do the benches project. So throughout town, if we want people on Crocker Park Trail, on the Crocker Trail, you know, you've got the mum with a stroller, you've got the person who's recovering from an injury who can only walk 10 feet. You've got all kinds of different people. You've got disabled people, you've got older people. But the more benches we put around town, the more people are going to get outside and walk around. So I had brought that idea to Public Art, and we decided that we shouldn't do that either. We should keep my project separate. And again, but with benches, we can put them anywhere and we can move them. So we could have, at some point, artful benches all over the place. And we could have, for my cafe project, adopt a bench idea to go out to the public and put benches everywhere in town so people will get outside and walk.
So I would say primarily what we're working on, although it wasn't discussed at this meeting, but we reported on it previously, is getting the plug preserve situated. So having a new main plug preserve location, but then also distributing some other plugs to other areas. Like we're gonna have a few right outside City Hall that are City of Brisbane municipality sort of themed. So that's kind of on a small scale. We already have the hydrants at the courtyard and we're just finding good places for them to go. And then, you know, if there's the opportunity to collaborate with Public Works, that's kind of an expedited timeline because that money is here and the project's coming forward now. So we would, you know, try to work on that. But ultimately, you know, we are really focused on the Public Art Master Plan, and to have that framework and that foundation is going to it's going to guide art throughout Brisbane, how we curate it and where it goes. So we are meeting with 9 Dot Arts in a couple of weeks, which is our consultant. They're going to be doing stakeholder interviews, and I think they're going to be, you know, taking a tour of the city. And so most of our work over the next year is really going to be very much focused on that. Once we have that, then I think we can get started on projects all over the place, but that's kind of the starting point first. So that's really our primary focus at the moment.
Okay.
And I would have to say, if I may, placing public art in the Ridge may have its own issues because it is a private community. So it's not really public. A lot of it is private streets. Some of them are private streets, and certainly the homeowners association would have to be on board with any of those kinds of things that went in that area. So I'm sure that placing art at the Ridge would have its own issues.
Did you have anything else?
No.
Colleen?
Thank you. I'm going to talk about Peninsula Clean Energy, and this seems to be something that every city is having to do, is to remind everyone that Peninsula Clean Energy was started by San Mateo County for San Mateo County citizens, and it's a nonprofit. And so the reason behind it was that you can buy your electricity from PG&E, but by having a nonprofit create an alternative for energy, that maybe you could save some money. So Peninsula Clean Energy since 2016 has been operating and growing by leaps and bounds and getting way ahead of all the state mandates about reducing carbon. The staff has more than doubled in just a couple years. But I mention this because a lot of times I'll ask different residents if they have Peninsula Clean Energy, and they'll say, oh no, I have PG&E. And most of you, if you look at your PG&E bill, you'll see electricity, you'll see a distribution charge, which is the wires, bringing it to your house and bringing it from the high tension wires. That is charged by PG&E. But the actual electricity that you use 97% of Brisbane electrical customers are Peninsula Clean Energy. And Peninsula Clean Energy discounts from PG&E rates on average about 5%. That may change, that may get even bigger. A lot of the money has not been able to be discounted even further because we've had to invest in contracts for solar, geothermal, and all kinds of alternative energy sources, planning for the next 5 to 6 years. So the best part about this is we had a meeting in December, and when we discount from PG&E rates, you kind of always have to have a rate going across a full year. But sometimes energy prices go up and down. So, you know, there's hydropower. Sometimes it's a wet year, so energy's a little cheaper because there's a lot of water running. And some years there's a little less, so it gets more expensive. So you just kind of have to estimate. And Peninsula Clean Energy has decided we're going to look at what we charged and what our real costs were, because we're trying to grow, but we also have this responsibility to the customers because we're nonprofit. So we had what we designated surplus funds, and there was a committee put together to figure out what to do with $68 million of surplus funds. And because it's nonprofit, then there were all different kinds of ideas, because obviously you could say, well, let's invest in a giant solar farm, because these are 15-year contracts many times. But they came back to the board of directors with some really great suggestions. And what you may not know is Peninsula Clean Energy already has had multiple programs. For instance, if you're very, very low income, and your house is just all built on gas, and you want to, let's say, replace your stove and get an electric stove, based on income, there's programs with Peninsula Clean Energy that will literally pay for the stove and install it. You can't get any better than that.
No.
And the reason is because it's always been thought, well, the only people that can afford to electrify are higher income. And PCE wants to make sure that even low-income residents of San Mateo County have that opportunity to start electrifying. There have even been some homes where they did a limited number of programs to see how it would go. They electrified a complete house, paid for the contractors, paid for all the heat pumps and the stove and everything, just all electric, to see what was involved. And so these programs are available. EV charging for multi-unit apartment buildings and condos, all kinds of incentives on buying electric vehicles. But I want to go back to the $68 million. So I'm going to just go over a couple things that were approved. There's a $300 rebate on the bills is going to go to roughly 41,000 CARE-FARA customers. Those are low income. So we're in the coldest part of the year, and they're going to get a really well-desired credit on their bill that'll probably go a couple months. There's also going to be, that's $12 million total. There's $10 million is going to go financing for residential storage and outages. And that's where you've heard of microgrids and finding ways within different cities and communities we can make smaller storage. So if there's major outages, we have that backup power. Next one was additional loan funds for local government electrification. We already have that Mission Blue. We have solar. We're going to have solar on the Brisbane Library. So this opens up more opportunities for cities to say, hey, we have a major project we want to do, but we don't have the money. So there will be an application program for that. That's $4.5 million. Also, energy storage for public buildings. So again, just like a city might have a city hall or police department, they want to put solar on it. They can apply for those funds. That will be $5 million. School electrification, this is big. School electrification and storage incentives, $5 million. So different school boards will be able to apply and say, hey, we have a big power bill. We want to do solar and we want to do a heat pump water heater. And they can apply for some of that funding. Emergency water heater replacement. This a lot of times is what causes people to not get heat pump water heaters. The water heater goes out and everybody gets in the panic. I'm not going to have hot water. It's in the middle of the winter. What PCE will have is, what they're trying to do is they'll have temporary gas water heater to put in temporarily while you meet with a contractor and find out the costs where maybe you want to change to an electric heat pump water heater. So it takes out that inertia, and this would all be covered and taken care of. So that's $5 million. Member agency energy grants, $11.5 million. So this is going to be an annual thing where different cities in the peninsula can say, we have a major project. We want to do whatever, solar, we want to do a massive battery storage. They're going to have to write a proposal. Those will all be submitted from the different cities. And then PCE will see what is the merit, which are the ones that are the greatest priority to fund right away. It might be one or two will get the funding, or it could be everybody gets a little bit of money. We have to just see what actually gets submitted. And then finally, funding for local power projects. Again, this is microgrid or other advanced energy. And that means where normally we do solar out in the middle of the desert, or we've got hydro, it could be in Oregon, or we get solar and geothermal out of Wyoming and Arizona and New Mexico. We're looking more and more. You lose about 10 to 15% of energy when it comes across a lot of miles. So we started to say, we need more of these in amongst where we are. And what areas are there between cities that maybe we could put solar farms or battery storage? So that is a new direction going into that, where PCE will look into the establishment of those microgrid, both creating power and the backup power. So this is a big departure from just the regular programs that PCE has had. Have a question? Yes.
I have a question. I mean, some of these things, obviously, for the residents are totally amazing right now, right?
Yes.
How are we getting that information out to the residents that these things are available right now?
An excellent question.
Thank you.
Which is one reason why I'm on the marketing committee, which is new. And we have a brand new marketing firm. That was my big beef, is that I said, most people don't know who PCE is.
Right.
You say, who's your provider? They say PG&E. And I said that identity of who's giving you this energy is lacking. So that's going to be the first and foremost task, is to try to disseminate that information and find a branding for PCE that becomes more familiar. And in turn, the big comment I had, and I know I had heard it from you, about when there's programs and there's things available, it was very difficult to call PCE and get help on the line because a lot of those were subcontractors. That's being brought in-house with trained employees, that instead of saying, oh, let me transfer you, or here, now call this number, it's going to be handled in-house. So it will be way more hands-on, and there will be more outreach in individual communities as well to try to actually show what PCE does and what's available. So it's more tangible.
Well, I sort of think when you went through this list that, you know, how many people's hot water services go out at the most inopportune times?
All the time.
That is a huge thing to stop someone going out and buying a new hot water service if that service is available. So how do we get that one particular item out real fast?
Well, okay, so there's a couple other items related to that, which is, as long as you've got Home Depot and you've got Lowe's and everyone's selling gas water heaters like crazy, that they'll tell you this is the cheapest, this is the most efficient, which is not necessarily true. That was also an idea that we will form partnerships with home improvements, so they know what's available and maybe can post things about if you're in the PCE territory, you're a customer, you can not only afford this electric water heater, but you can also get incentives through PCE to find out that information.
Interesting. Thank you. Anything else?
Nope. Thank you.
Yeah, so Madison and I.
Can you beat that one?
No, definitely not, and I don't want to, because that was a lot. But it was very informative. Thank you, Colleen. Yeah, so Madison and I, we had a meeting of the Affordable Housing Subcommittee, and we had a great exchange with Robert Skelton from Rebuilding the Peninsula. You know, now that we have our affordable housing strategic plan in place, kind of getting to, okay, how do you get this information out there? And so this, we're hoping, is one of those first steps. You know, part of the affordable housing strategic plan is to maintain existing affordable housing. And you know, a lot of that is, you know, homes that people who are on fixed incomes or low income are in, right? They're homeowners, but sometimes it's hard to maintain those homes.
Yep.
And so Robert gave us a great slideshow, and we're hoping to have him do that for the full council to show what they do, so that then the community can see that.
That's great.
And you know, and get on board. And you know, sometimes people feel like, oh yeah, nothing's free. Yeah, and what they do is they do offer a free service if you qualify, and they'll make your home safe. And that's you know, that's what they do. And hopefully the full council you know, likes what they offer, and we'll take it from there. But you want to add to that?
Oh, yeah, we
Madison?
also had an update about the Visitation Garden senior apartments. And Bridge has approached HIP Housing about a potential lease transfer. It's in the very early stages, but staff is going to interact with HIP Housing further, and it'll come back to the subcommittee to work out some of the details once HIP has done their due diligence. So that's something that will be up for discussion amongst the council at some point in the future. And yeah, just to reiterate, Rebuilding Together will, they fund projects in the community, like a mural, stuff to mitigate blight. Then they will also work with individual homeowners to help homeowners stay in their home. So they'll make improvements like adding ramps, grab bars, painting, new flooring, things that, you know, maybe deferred maintenance that somebody just cannot afford to do, but is essential to their well-being. Or if, you know, their mobility has changed and they can know it's threatening their ability to stay in their home, they could qualify for a project from Rebuilding Together. That money comes from a lot of different sources. The city can earmark funds for Rebuilding Together to spend specifically in Brisbane. They get, you know, funds from all over the place. And there is an applicant right now from Brisbane who's been approved. So Rebuilding Together will organize a small team, usually, well, for this project, it will be less than 10 individuals who will come in and complete all the work in one day. Could be like new cabinets, new flooring, that sort of thing. So it's a really exciting program, and they have almost no applicants ever from Brisbane. So there's definitely a big opportunity there to get the word out to our residents, because I'm sure there are, all of us can think of somebody who might qualify and who would certainly benefit from this type of program. So we look forward to discussing it more at length as a group in the future.
Terry, did you have anything?
I just had the one meeting that was with you, Karen, with the infrastructure.
Okay. All right. Are we done with reports here? Okay. All right, so, item I is Congressman Mullen's coffee with City Council on January 25th from 10 o'clock. City manager and I will be attending that on Saturday, the 25th. And I am going as Mayor O'Connell is out of the country. I do have something else that I need to.
Someone else? Is that why
But
that's
on that-
agendized?
Yes, we were wondering if another member
Oh.
wanted to go.
Yeah, I'm glad that we have it on there because only two of us
Can go.
can go. Yeah, so I had expressed to Clay that I was interested in going, but it'd be good to talk about it on the council and see who was interested, and if there were three, come up with some way to, make it fair that the two that wanted to go could go.
Let me ask a question.
Sure.
Could we have some idea, if we have two council members, what you plan to take to Congressman Mullen, as this is important to Brisbane? I'd like to know what you're going to talk about.
My thoughts are to talk to Congressman Mullen about the insurance companies and their behavior in Brisbane.
Like at the Ridge and so on and so forth?
I know of somebody who just lost their entire insurance load, their liability insurance, their car insurance, and their homeowner's insurance. And in 25 years, they've made no claims. And what they were told was that the particular company, and I'm not going to mention it at this point, was moving out of California. That is not true. This was cherry-picked, so I'm trying to get to the bottom of it.
Well, there's also, at Altamar, the rates have gone through the roof.
The rates have gone through the roof, quadrupling in some cases.
There-
So I'm hoping, and I've had this conversation with Clay, is that, where on earth is this going to end? So, this has got to go to the state. We've got to rattle every cage we can about this.
Absolutely.
I have some documents that I'm working on redacting the names of the people involved to send to Senator Becker's office and say, please explain this. We're having these massive cancellations or these huge price rises that people just can't afford to pay your homeowner's insurance. If you don't have homeowner's insurance, you can't have a loan.
There is some information I can share with you that I think we need to get publicly in Brisbane, because I attended a webinar that was put on by the Insurance Commissioner's Office, and it was dealing with exactly this topic. And it outlined what the Insurance Commissioner's Office is doing about it, went through different insurance companies and what the status was on different ones. But I don't want to go into all that detail tonight, but it is some information. I have some ideas I think we need to get to Brisbane residents.
I spoke with an Altamar board member. They told me that their policy was in the neighborhood of $130,000 a year, split amongst all of the Altamar units. It went up to 1.2 million. So that has just dramatically increased, to the point that there were concerned that it's actually going to affect the prices of those.
Affordability of people living there.
Totally.
Absolutely.
We've received, a letter from a member of the community who said this cost increase is totally jeopardizes my ability to, afford my home. It's highway robbery. Anyway.
And Viewpoint as well has the same issue.
So
It's all over Brisbane, actually.
yeah,
Everywhere.
it's now actually becoming mortgage brokers are advising their clients to put in, spoke with a mortgage broker yesterday, advising their clients to put in a insurance contingency when they're making offers. It's something that you didn't really see in the past.
No.
But and from their clients in particular, they're seeing, where they can only afford they're already maxed out on their ratios, right? They can afford maybe $200 a month, and the total or the insurance for the year is like $8,000, and so they can't move forward with purchasing the property because it's beyond their means, just simply for the insurance, which they don't find out until well into the process. So it's really impacting people staying in their homes and being able to purchase.
This is something the state of California is going to have to resolve.
Yeah. Yeah. So the reason that I would like to go is, first of all, just to listen, right? To learn what someone who is a representative at the federal level can do for a small town like Brisbane, right? We know there's a lot of state regulations and things like that, but those are more Sacramento. Many times, when you're high up on the food chain, it's difficult to understand what those opportunities are. So it's really getting to know what Kevin might be able to provide. And then, of course, if there are federal opportunities that I think would be appropriate for Brisbane, especially, in regards to the Baylands, in regards to perhaps transportation or, some other remediation that needs to occur out there. So, yeah.
Okay, looks like the three of us then. Unless, did you want to go?
No,
wanna
I've
go?
got something else I've got to do.
Okay, so
Actually, spoke with Kevin at a coffee at Madhouse already in 2023. Cliff and I were there. And so I brought up concerns around affordable housing and other concerns. So I feel like I've already had time with him. So.
All right. No, that sounds good. So Karen, so now I guess we're still in those mayor and council matters. So Tom said that it would be best for us to talk about what the public brought before us at this time to see if we would be willing to give staff.
Excuse me, wait.
Sure. Okay, so
We can't take action on an unagendaed item. What I meant was, sorry, it was misunderstood. If you had a question about how to put something on the agenda, now would be the time, because that's a general question, but it's not.
Oh yeah, no, and I'm not, okay, Tom, I guess, sorry, and I
just want to make sure.
What you said. Yeah, no, for sure. So, in the past, when there's been things that have come before us, we've then turned to staff and say, hey, okay, Clay, can you put this on a future agenda? And then, if the council is in agreement, then it just gets done. So
that's
right. So
I thought you had a different question.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. That's what I meant. I mean, like, can we give staff direction to put these items on our future agenda?
Yeah, and then that future meeting is when they would be acted on. So yeah, that's perfectly fine.
Okay.
So,
okay.
So if I can interject a little bit here, Cliff.
Okay.
I think it's really important that staff takes the time to look into some of the requests that the members of the public have made and what implications those would have and how legally they would need to be enacted. And I think it really would need to go to a subcommittee before it came back to a meeting. We understand I think we understand from the letter what the public was asking if was possible. But I think that as a council and for staff, we need to know what is possible and what kind of timelines it would be before we open up it to public discussion when we don't know those answers. So I would think that at a future meeting, we would agendize having a subcommittee to look into it and going forward, it's it that way.
I appreciate your opinion. Do we have, Clay, do we have a subcommittee that already in existence that could
Not currently, no.
Okay,
I mean, not constructed the way it was several years ago.
got it, got it. Okay, so then, Tara, are you saying that we should give staff direction to agendize forming a subcommittee to evaluate these 3 items that have come forward?
Yes, and I don't think that staff necessarily needs to do a lot of work to do that, to put agenda, to create a subcommittee. I think the amount of work after that will be dependent on what staff and the subcommittee come up with.
Okay, I don't know, that seems appropriate.
I'm good with the subcommittee. I think it's gonna take some research, and I think it's important to be able to delve into that a little bit more deeply before, it comes to us as a full body to contemplate. And of course, all subcommittees are open to the public, so anyone could attend a subcommittee meeting if they wanted to, be a part of that from the very beginning. But I don't know how you feel about it, Councilmember O'Connell, but you were on, she's done a lot of this research already because she's looked into this prior. So, but I guess we wouldn't now determine who would be on the subcommittee.
We can't make a subcommittee.
Yeah, we just
We can't
agendize,
make
I
a
guess,
subcommittee.
it for next meeting.
Yeah, if you could agendize it for the next meeting, I think that would be appropriate and set up the subcommittee.
Okay, Colleen, do you have anything else? Okay, I do. So I was contacted, and I'm just going to read what I wrote so my words don't get scrambled by anybody. As many of you already know, I objected to the City Council workshop of January the 4th, 2024. I felt that it had not been correctly noticed. I asked that the meeting be rescheduled with better notice to the public after the attendees of the workshop asked at the last moment that it be recorded. That information had not gone out to the public prior to the actual meeting. However, my objections were overruled by the council and the workshop was recorded. Because that workshop has now been recorded, people have obviously gone and listened to it. And I've since been contacted and asked to clarify and correct the record regarding comments made by our city manager regarding a meeting that he attended in 2016 with the mayor. The correction that I was asked to make was that the mayor had set up this meeting without informing the staff or the city council. And once it became known that this meeting with then Mayor Ed Lee of San Francisco was known to another council member, only then did the city manager intercede and attend that meeting. This part of the meeting can be found in the recording at minutes 7 through 9 of that recorded video workshop. Thank you. So that's what I had to say. And now we can move on to written communications.
Written correspondence was received from Bumanglag, Liveaboard Request at Marina, Deterrent regarding water aerobics, Jones Water Aerobics, Frank Water Aerobics, Trebing Water Aerobics, Aloft Election Policies, Kendall Water Aerobics, Lynn Water Aerobics, Martin Water Aerobics, Oseto Idea Committee, Martyr Water Aerobics, Cochrane Water Aerobics, Walker Letter to the Council Term Limits, Laksamana Term Limits, and Recommerce Inc. WAR Notice.
And Janet Bildhofer for water aerobics. I went back and looked at them too. Okay, we now move on to oral communications number 2. Is there any member of the public wishing to speak? It says there's a hand raised, but I don't see.
Michelle Salmon.
Go ahead, Michelle.
Hi, I'm sorry I missed the first part of the meeting, but there were some things in the, first of all, I'd like to thank you for passing the dark skies ordinance very much. In Clay's staff report about the development, I am concerned about the development that's being looked at for the Sierra Point Marina. That marina is now, the landfill there is now past 40 years old. I think it's about 42 years old or 43 since they actually finished that landfill. And I believe we have cap issues. I've looked carefully at the landscape compared to what it has been in the past. We definitely have saltwater intrusion along the marina, the side of it, the coastline, but there are trees dying in the central part of the landscape that really shouldn't be dying. And to me, that could be a strong indicator of cap failure. We have a serious problem with ground squirrels. We have a serious problem with subsidence. And I think that this issue really needs to be looked at, examined by professional people who look at landfill caps, especially water landfill. And I think it needs to be addressed before any further development is approved at Sierra Point Marina. Because what I heard tonight is a lot of development being proposed for Sierra Point Marina. And I don't feel like that landfill is stable enough to do that without a serious look. It's been over 40 years, and that is past sort of the amount of time that landfill was expected to keep its integrity. The second issue I want to talk about is the quarry development, and I think that this definitely needs to have full public exposure because we are talking about a 1.4 million square foot facility in the quarry with potential of 24/7 hour operation, an amazing increase of truck traffic in and out of Crocker Industrial Park. And it could actually make lives so miserable for people living at the Ridge and people living in central Brisbane and the other businesses in Crocker Industrial Park that I think everybody needs really full awareness of what's happening. And so I would like the city to really work at publicizing this and not just saying, oh, we're moving ahead with this. This is huge, huge impact on the quality of life for the people in Brisbane. And third, for the stars on the wall at the community park, we could probably find a very easy way of restoring that. And that is instead of replacing the plastic stars, just go ahead and take them off and paint the stars on and paint the dedication of the people who donated instead of spending a great deal of money. And that could even be somewhat of a community project like what we've done with the fire plugs. So I think that would really not spend a lot of money and achieve the same kind of partnership that we're looking for to get the job done without spending public art money. That's it for me. Thank you so much again for passing the dark skies ordinance. It's been a long time in coming. It's why I joined, accepted the challenge from Ray Miller to step up and be on the Open Space and Ecology Committee. And the dark skies ordinance was one of the things that I most wanted. And I most wanted it in response to the amount of light trespass from Crocker Industrial Park and how disturbing that is for most people. And we've had a lot more light trespass since then. So I hope that we really do start moving forward with code enforcement on this and getting people on board with shielding their lights and creating a better environment for both animals, insects, birds, and people in the city of Brisbane. It's not about star watching. It really is about all of our health. So thank you very much. And thanks for all the hard work that you do. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Michelle. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak? Okay, then I am going to call this meeting adjourned at 9:36 p.m. in